what's Europe planning? What's Europe thinking about its future? What is this civilizational turn that you've spoken about? Um, and how do you see Europe's future now playing out?
From various European politicians in quite a number of different countries, increasing civilizational language. And actually, the most interesting case of it is actually President Macron, who started to use that language quite strongly in like 2019 in terms of talking about effectively sort of defending European civilization against US-China competition, and not getting swallowed up in that. He was also using it then to argue in favour of a reset of relations with Russia, and obviously that's proved to be like a dead end. But I think the big picture with Europe is just how difficult I think the new world is for European countries. And a good deal of that, I think, is to do with the energy transition issues, because Europe, right back in the first decade of the 21st century, led, I think, really on this by Germany, but doubled down on by the commitment to net zero in 2019 at the European level, and talk about Europe being the first carbon, at least neutral, net zero continent. Essentially wanted to see the energy transition as a chance for Europe to escape the geopolitical problems that have plagued Europe since the age of oil began. Sort of, this is where we can have domestically, in a continent sense, generated energy again. We won't be stuck with the problems that we've had from having to import oil from wherever and gas from wherever else in the world. And the problem is that it doesn't quite look like that from the European point of view in terms of escaping foreign resource dependency because of the metals question. Now, in a way, you can say that actually Europe's position, it's not geographically that good, because the predominance of the metals required for the energy transition are in the southern hemisphere. On the other hand, there are some of these metals in Europe. The problem in Europe is the deep resistance amongst European electorates for this kind of mining to take place in European countries. There's a kind of mindset that says we want it somewhere else. Put it on the other side. Put it on the other side of the world. We don't want all that environmental.
The dirty work should be happening on the continent. Correct.
Yeah, and that's just not going to work in the world, like geopolitically.
Yeah. No, of course. Though, I mean, to play devil's advocate for a second, I think Europe seems to be saying that we want to be a climate tech leader. We want to be, and of course, there's capital available. And even if you don't have the metals, to your point earlier about oil and other things, it's the processing sometimes that can bring a lot of value add and economic wealth. So, to the extent that Europe could leverage its capital, leverage its large corporates across the board, across various industries, to maybe be part of the and lead the new climate tech revolution, maybe there's still hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the point at this in this respect is that China is already there, and so it actually requires dislodging China from its present position. And there are certain areas, obviously, in which the United States wants to compete too. So if you just look at African countries, for instance, the European Union's been making a big deal for at least 4 or 5 years now. I mean, Merkel started it quite late in her premiership in terms of talking about how important Africa was for the European Union, and wanting to make it a priority of the period. I think it was in 2020 when the Germans held the EU presidency. But China was there however many decades, really, several decades before the Europeans in prioritizing those kind of investment partnerships in African countries. And in this respect, leaving the rare earths issue aside, then China's predicaments quite like the Europeans, in the sense is it's not going to do so well on the actual metal production, as I say, rare earths aside. It wants to be in the processing, technological processing space. It just that it got to the game quicker than the European countries.